Mac. He's my cat. And he tends to want to play with my keyboard, so I have to be real careful and keep him away. Stop. Stop.
Hi, you connecting? We're starting at, yeah. Okay,
With
good.
John.
Zoom. Thank you.
Hey, Bob.
Hello, Brendan. We're live on HCAM TV and we're streaming live on YouTube. Just waiting
All
for
right.
a quorum.
Irfan, how are you? Good. You connecting on Zoom? No, okay. We start on Zoom and then we jump over to Google Meet.
Hi, Connor.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hey, Bob. Bob,
Okay.
what do I need to say? I need to put something in the chat room to say that it's okay for people to record this, or Zach, or who do I need to?
Are you the host?
I am. Yep. Oh, no, I guess I'm not.
Well,
don't
the
think-
host can give
the
anybody
administrator will
permission to
say that.
record.
Josh will do that. Okay. I know that there was a question the first time we did it if Hop News could have.
Hi, Irfan.
Hello.
Yeah, it
All
is
right.
being recorded right now, so
Okay. So we got 3. All right. So we have a quorum. So I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting, the Hopkins Select Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 19, I believe. And we will, I would
Might as well connect to Zoom.
I would accept a motion to move into executive session to approve the executive session minutes to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with DPW Fire and Dispatch Communications Unions, because the chair declares the discussion in an open meeting to have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town, and to
So
discuss
moved.
strategy with respect to the purchase, lease value, or real property relative to Main Street Town Hall Legacy Farm, because the chair declares that would be detrimental. To allow Norman Kamalo and Elaine Lazarus to participate in the discussion, and to convene an open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
So moved.
Mary Jo, how'd you like to second that?
Second.
It's roll call vote. How do you vote? Ted Stone, yes.
That's really yes.
Catino, yes.
Bernier, yes. Oh, sorry, John.
Oh, no problem. I just, my microphone, I'm having to use my telephone because I can't get internet working.
Okay. All right. So we are going to jump out of the Zoom meeting and go over to our Google meeting. And we will come back to open session at the conclusion of that. At that point, I'll read my waiver and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you. And if you're going to go on a separate device, John or Irfan or Mary Jo, make sure you put this one on mute, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Nope, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. And start video. There we go.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Are we in public or executive right now?
The Zoom call is currently still just the public. They went into a Hangouts for the executive session.
Who did?
The rest of the board, they just voted to go in.
Oh, something's confusing here.
So it's just, it would just be mute this, and I'm sure they probably sent you an email or a calendar invite or something to it.
Huh.
Hey, Brian, it's Josh. Elaine sent an email at about 3 p.m. I wasn't on the email, so I don't know the exact time, but it was roughly around 3. She sent one with the link for both of the meetings.
All right. I can still see the other members here,
Yeah, they're all just muted.
but they're in executive session. Hi, Norman.
Are we back?
We're back.
Okay. There we go.
Who do we have? So we've got Mary Jo. We've got Irfran. All right. So we have a quorum. So I am going, and Brian's there. All right. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. In just a moment, as soon as I find this script, here it is. So again, same as last meeting, I apologize. I did not print out the script, so I'm reading it off my phone. I've not yet committed it to memory, nor do I plan on it. Select Board Meeting 5/19/20. As a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the executive session portion are present and can hear me, actually. So we're going to skip by that because we already hit that. All right. So as a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Catino. Not present. Brian Herr.
Here.
Irfan Nasrullah.
You're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute, I think, Irfan. All right, not present. Mary Jo Lafreniere.
Present.
Brendan Tedstone, present. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Kamalu.
Present.
Ms. Lazarus.
Present.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Some may be here now, others may join us later. Sean McAuliffe.
Present.
Christopher Haymans. Not present. Dan Terry.
Here.
Jay Gelfi. Not present. Introduction to remote meeting. Good evening. The open meeting of the Hopkins Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed to and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted in the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. The meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one of its many channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials, meeting supporting materials packet. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct for our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after the members have spoken, the chair will afford the public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commenters, I will call each by name and afford up to 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Before we begin, let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So, public forum. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? If so, please identify yourself by name and address.
Darlene? You're on mute.
Okay. Hi, Darlene Hayes, 1/3 Road. I brought something to you guys' attention in January. Just wanted to follow up about the gas stations down by 495. If there's a chance of trying to make those no left turns out, and didn't know if there was any progress on that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was just concerned about some safety in my neighborhood, about making sure there'll be lifeguards at Sandy Beach and fixing up the parking lot. That's it.
Okay, you can follow up with Norman on that. Norman, you'll follow up on that?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Scanavan. I reside at 26 Huckleberry Road. I had previously been in touch with people at Town Hall to try to get some awareness as to the rising water levels on Whitehall Brook due to beaver damming. I did have the pleasure of talking with Selectman Catino, who came out and toured the grounds. So I was just wondering if there were any updates on the remediation issues. And I would ask Selectman Catino to please comment if he has any feedback from his visit.
So we don't, during public comment, we don't have a back and forth. So we simply afford you the time to bring up your points, and I would refer you to Mr. Kamalo if you have any questions. Okay. Is there anybody else? Mr. Deegan, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you, Connor Deegan, 51 Pleasant Street, also the town clerk here in Hopkinton. I just wanted to make a really quick plug towards that we're offering mail-in voting to protect people from exposure to COVID-19 with the upcoming June 29th annual town election. And I just wanted to encourage people to check local news media websites, the secretary's website and the town website to get the application and send it in as soon as possible. If you can get your application into town hall to my attention by the end of the month, then that'll ensure you get your ballot as quickly as possible so that we can really make sure that we have as few people physically as possible at the polls, preventing the spread to both members of the public, but as well as election workers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Deegan. Is there anybody else? Hearing none. All right, so we're going to turn it over to Sean McAuliffe, the Public Health Director. He will provide the town's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. McAuliffe, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to date, the health department has managed 108 total confirmed cases. We're actively managing 8 cases. We have 87 cases that have recovered and are sad to report the passing of 13 Hopkinton residents. We have 1 active case at Golden Pond. We had a high of 55. We continue to work weekly with the leadership at the facility. We continue to update the Mass Department of Public Health as to their progress. And, I applaud Golden Pond for rising to the occasion and getting to where they are at. They're a success story right now. On other good news, the previously positive resident at Fairview has recovered. Casey and I facilitated the testing of approximately 100 residents at the facility on Thursday, May 14th. None of those residents that were tested were positive for COVID-19. Again, another success story, and it's just a compliment to the efforts that they have put in place at the facility to manage their risk. We continue to be in contact with them, and we'll be working through, to the end of this outbreak and this pandemic. We had one resident at the Windsor Apartments, and they have since recovered. So again, the 3 of the 4 high density facilities are doing well right now. And we have no cases that we're aware of at Woodview. Our team continues to implement mitigation strategies to reduce the transmission of COVID-19 in the community. We have opted to continue to utilize the school nurses instead of the Commonwealth's Community Tracing Collaborative. We feel that the nurses have, they have a personal relationship with the residents in Hopkinton, and we feel that we're able to provide a better service, a more intimate service for the residents. And as I said, we will continue to use them into the summer.
Sean, can I jump in for a second to
Certainly.
put Hopkinton's COVID cases into perspective? I'm on a weekly conference call with the mayor of Framingham, as well as the DPH and all the geriatric facilities in the city. Oak Knoll has over 100 active cases. St. Pat's has over 100 active cases. Bethany Hospital has over 75 active cases. Elliott has a bunch of active cases. It's you guys, it shows what a great job that you guys are doing proactively to kind of take the tip off the spear. So you're doing a great job, and I don't want the public to be alarmed when you see a Golden Pond or Fairview or someone whose population is generally of geriatric nature to have that hit them. I will also say that there is, like I said at the last meeting, with the deaths, there's a big difference between dying from COVID and dying with COVID.
Right.
And so sometimes facts can be misleading, but
Right.
you guys are doing a really good job to hear that Golden Pond is down to 8, and
Or they're down to 1.
down to 1. Okay, sorry.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, great job, wonderful job.
Thank
Sorry
you.
for interrupting.
No. And it's, like I said, it's everybody that we're working with has been really responsive. We've been able to really implement some good solid practices. And again, it's if they weren't cooperating, and if we hadn't brought in the Department of Public Health and other partners who wouldn't normally be here in this space, I think we'd have different results. But
Yep.
we have a lot to be proud of here. So of the 7 active cases, most of those are work related or associated with social contact. So again, those cases are consistent with what we're seeing throughout the region. There's been a slight increase in cases. We believe those are, the result of residents returning to the workforce, a lack of social distancing, fatigue, and some of it is college students returning home. They may have been in their apartment through this weekend, and they're coming back to the Metro West region, and we're seeing a slight uptick in cases associated with their return. The governor and our department continue to repeat, self-isolation. It's difficult but necessary to defeat the virus. As the weather improves, it's our responsibility to ourselves and to our loved ones to utilize face coverings, to social distance, practice good hygiene, and to stay home when you're sick. And if we persevere, we'll succeed. And I think it's evident that in Hopkinton, we have taken this seriously, and we're faring better than a lot of the communities in our region. We're in the process of reviewing the governor's reopening plan. It was released yesterday. It can be found at www.mass.gov reopening. The plan is cautious. It's driven by an analysis of public health data. Its success is dependent on the Hopkinton residents, the employees at our facilities, our employers, our health systems, and the government all working together. The residents, employees, and business owners must continue to focus on the basics, face covering, social distancing, good hygiene, and staying home when ill. This part of the governor's plan is regarded as, or called, his social guidance, it's the social guidance portion of his plan. We're going to work on our messaging there. We're also working with businesses to help them develop and implement their COVID-19 control plan, to self-certify that their business is prepared to execute on the plan on the day that they open. We're also working with the municipality to put together our individual plans. We have a team in place. We've called on the department directors to put independent plans in place. So we're here to help facilitate and implement these plans and provide comment as we get closer to reopening. The health department and the Department of Labor are responsible for the local enforcement of the governor's plan. We have the AG's office, the state and local police as support. But a lot of the enforcement has been pushed down to the health department. So our approach is education and support. We're not here as a punitive or for punitive measures or actions. We're just here to support the community as we grow closer to reopening. We're currently working with the houses of worship in town, manufacturing and construction businesses, and the shooting ranges. That's the first group that has approval to open up May 18th. We're working with the superintendent's office and the high school administration on the implementation of their graduation plan. Of note, for the superintendent, the DPH just alerted us that they are publishing a guidance for live and almost live graduation. That's supposed to be out this week, so there may be hope. And we'll continue to update you. We're working with Parks and Recreation and the YMCA to get them up and ready for their opening in late May and early June. And then, as I said, I'm working with Deputy Miller, Fire Prevention Officer Poirier on the reopening plans for the town and the municipal offices. We're going to have some challenges with offices like Connor's, my own office, and the HR office because they're small, and to socially distance will be a little difficult. But they're challenges that I believe we can overcome. Lastly, Casey and I are working on possibly hosting a drive-through clinic and providing some other activities to support our residents through this reopening process. And I just want to acknowledge the efforts and contributions made by all of the departments. And as I stated earlier this month, we're in a much better position because of our ability to work collaboratively in this town. And again, it's a testament to, our municipal offices and the leadership in town that we're in the place that we are. So that said, if you have any questions, I'm ready.
Thank you, Sean. Board members, any questions for Sean?
Sean, through the chair, Sean, how do you see the governor's phase one? And do you think that the town can meet its obligations to, get us moving safely?
Yes, it's a cautious plan. So, as I said, we've already been notified. I think I got 10 calls today about, or just asking for some assistance, some guidance, some interpretation. We're taking those questions, forwarding them to the Department of Public Health, the Department of Labor, the Attorney General's office, and the governor's office. We're getting feedback on the questions that I provided today. That feedback will come tomorrow and Friday. So we are working closely with the people that are in charge of the development of this plan and the oversight of the implementation. And I think we'll have the town ready and opening smoothly. That's our goal.
Thanks, Sean. Any other board members?
Sean, can we put together like a one-page sort of synopsis of the phase one and what it means for Hopkinton in particular? You mentioned the houses of worship and the shooting ranges. I think manufacturing is in there and construction companies. So maybe just sort of, and then the further guidance that beyond that, everything else kind of remains as is. If you're going to go to the start line, you're going to go in like you're doing now, and you're going to leave. And just, I think, because I found the governor's documents to be somewhat confusing about how it applies to us here locally. And I don't want to create another, big piece of work for you, but some kind of basic synopsis of what this means for Hopkinton and what we need to continue doing because it hasn't changed yet.
Right, and admittedly, it's difficult. There are some errors in some of the basic guidance, and there's a lot of, yes, I can, because there are some issues that have come up, like what is an unconfined outdoor space? I have no idea. The attorneys couldn't even define what that is, and it means it means a lot for, I have someone who wants to have a home wedding. If an unconfined open space means, an acre or a property greater than an acre in size, they can have maybe 20 people at the wedding. If it's not, they're going to be limited to 10. So it's, and these are the things that we're bringing to the state government and saying, come on, we just need some answers, because the lack of clarity has some real life implications.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your support.
Moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are to, number one, approve the minutes of the 5/5/20 select board meeting. Number two, to approve a parade permit for a rolling parade of approximately 300 cars to celebrate the graduates of Hopkins High School class of 2020 on May 30, 2020, beginning at 1 p.m., starting and ending at the high school. And number three, to confirm the select board's current advisory board member of the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, Brian Herr. Board members, are there any items that you'd like to break out?
I'd like to break out the parade permit.
Item 2, the parade.
All right, go ahead, you two. Or Fran, you go first.
So I just want to say I'm all in favor of it, and I feel terrible for all our graduating seniors that they're not getting the chance to experience graduation the way that me and somebody after me and somebody before me had. And I think this is a wonderful move, a wonderful opportunity. to make the best of a very terrible situation. So hats off to you guys. Graduating seniors, go kill it. You're going to do awesome.
Yep. Mr. Herr?
I'm just curious what the route's going to be. I think this is a great idea, and I'd like to. You're planning on going throughout the entire town, or just zipping around downtown, or we want to publicize this so we get people out and standing on the street as the kids are coming by. So just wondering what the route's going to look like.
So if I'm correct, it was taking a right out of the high school, going down Route 85 south, take a left on Chestnut, at Ash Street, take a left where it meets with Front Street. You take that left, go out to the Common, come down Main Street over to Pleasant, take a left on Pleasant, come up Pleasant, take a right on Grove, and finish taking a right back into the high school, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
I
great.
think they're going to Wood and Elm
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. So
and then Pleasant.
they're gonna go,
Little,
they're
yeah.
gonna stay 80, come down Ash Street, get on Main Street, take a right on Wood Street, take a left on Elm, and then
And then left and right
and a
on
left
Pleasant.
on West Main Street, right on Pleasant. I'm sorry. Yep, right on Pleasant, and then right on Grove, right into the high school.
So what's our plan to make sure every Hopkinton resident knows when this is going to happen, so we get as many thousands of people out there to celebrate our seniors as we can?
Facebook, Brian, you should try it.
I don't do Facebook. It's full of lies.
Yeah, well, you're probably just as good. It's just as good that you're not on it. Yeah, I've seen it on Facebook all over the place, and word of mouth, and
I think we have Robert here. I think we can get Robert to put it on Hop News.
Yeah, he's raising his hand. He's on mute though.
Mr. Falsani.
It's already been on there. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Well, we just keep it going, keep it going. We want these kids. I have a question. How many graduating seniors are there? How big is this class?
So I'll hand that over to Mr. Bishop. He has all the answers.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for
Thank
allowing
you.
me to have some opportunities to talk a little bit about the parade. And we would really appreciate the permit for this. There are 302 graduates in the class of 2020. I think we all acknowledge it's a really tough way to end their high school career. It's a wonderful group of seniors. I have been working closely with the class, trying to come up with some different alternatives to make it memorable and special at the end of their high school careers. So we came up with a two-phase. This is going to be the first, this car parade. And you are right on the route. We are working with some of our really talented art students to come up with a flyer that we will be spreading through the community, sending it through Hop News. We're going to try to talk to the Hopkins Independent if we can try to get that in there. Facebook, as the chair mentioned, as well as our different communications to our families in town. We're also going to be, when the parade is happening, going live on HCAM, as well as their YouTube feed. And that feed is also going to go through, I think it's MRC 101.3 out of Milford. And so you're going to be able to listen and watch the parade. We're going to have some administrators talking about each one of the graduates as they kind of roll through the high school before they get on to 85. And then once all the graduates are on the parade route, they have put together a pre-recorded kind of message as well as playlist that the radio is going to play that they can listen as they drive through town. So we're really excited about it. I'll be communicating with the students and parents tomorrow once hopefully we get this permit. And then we're going to, as Sean McAuliffe said, look to do some type of in-person ceremony on August 2nd outside. It's a Sunday. We sent out a survey to our seniors and our parents. We had almost 600 responses, and everybody wanted us to try to have some type of in-person ceremony if possible. So we listened to their feedback, and I know some other communities are trying to do something at the end of May, beginning of June, but we felt we really wanted to give this group the proper send-off. So that's why we have kind of a two-phase, this car parade on May 30th, as well as our hopeful in-person graduation on August 2nd. We have been working really closely. I want to thank the police department, Chief Bennett, Officer Powers have been wonderful coming up with the route. If you notice, it goes by all 5 schools, including Center School, which I think is a nice touch. We're going to be inviting staff members from those schools to also be part of the parade and be out waving on the graduates and wishing them luck. We have 5 to 6 detail that will be present. They've come up with an operations plan as well as to be on the parade route, encouraging folks to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. So that's certainly something we've talked about. I have a number of expectations that I'll share with the student body about their behavior during the parade as well. But again, I've been working with also Chief Slayman. I see him on the call, Sean McAuliffe, Dr. Kavanaugh. It's been a really a nice team effort to try to come up with what we feel is a really nice and memorable, and maybe something we continue years to come, celebration for this class. So we really appreciate you putting this on the agenda and considering it for us.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I will entertain a motion. Mr. Catino.
I move that we approve the consent agenda, including the parade permit.
Okay, roll call vote on, yep, thank you for the second, Mary Jo. Roll call vote on the consent agenda. How do you vote, Mr. Catino?
Catino, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Mr. Tedstone, yes. Thank you very much. Parks and Rec Commission program update. Mr. Kamalu?
Mr. Chair, the chair of the Park and Rec Commission is available to give an update to the board.
Okay.
So the Parks and Rec Commission appreciates the opportunity, and I know personally I appreciate everything that the town manager and the Board of Selectmen have done to address expenses given revenue shortfalls and increased expenses that we're apt to see because of COVID-19. I'm here to talk about the hiring freeze and to ask for some relief from that for two separate Parks and Rec things. So I think it would make sense if I parsed them a little bit. The first,
Dan,
someone's on. Can someone get muted?
Yeah, Dan, hang on one second. Somebody's not muted. Whoever just joined us recently may not be muted.
I think we're good now. Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
So the first of the two would be for the summer camps, the different programs that we run at the schools. I guess what we'd like to do is we'd like to be able to go ahead and do hiring and potentially run these with an intention of running these programs. Of course, we'd be in touch with the Board of Health and accept any recommendations they had if we needed to pause programming at any point or cancel it completely. But the rationale for doing this is it's a service to the town that people really enjoy. But from a financial standpoint, we would only start a week or do any of these programs if we were sure that the revenue for the week would exceed the costs associated with the hiring. So I guess we'd like would request your approval to go ahead and hire the kids and the people that run those programs.
Yeah, so Dan, the reason that we put the whole hiring freeze into effect was to simply save the town money. And if this is, so I've spoken to Mr. Kamalu about this. This is a twofold win-win in my eyes. Number one, it's going to be at the very least revenue neutral, if not positive. And number two, it's going to allow a huge portion of kids in town to be able to come back to a season of normality or normalcy. So as one board member, I am totally for the lifting of the hiring freeze on this. And I know that Dan feels the same way. You know, if you wind up getting 15 kids signed up for the camp, you're not going to have 20 kids as employees. You're going to staff to the appropriate levels, and I'm very confident that that Dan and his staff will staff to the appropriate levels for this summer camp. Mr. Kamalu, do we need now? Before I ask if we need a motion on this and a vote, are there any other board members that want to talk about this?
Well, through the chair. Yeah, I just think it's real important. It's, especially when we're thinking about the summer camps and Sandy Beach and the lifeguards. People just look forward to it. We have.
We're not, John, we're not talking about Sandy Beach. We're talking about the summer camps right now.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, my kids have enjoyed the summer camps at both as campers and as counselors, and it's another thing that's just great for the town. The kids are close by, and it's a great program. I'm totally for it.
Thank you. Any other board members?
Mr. Chair, I think this is right in line with why we put the hiring freeze in place.
Yeah.
We don't have to lift the hiring freeze to approve these positions. I think it makes good sense to approve the positions with the understanding that obviously the state's not going to allow kids to gather and we don't fill the positions.
Right.
If we can go forward, which I hope we can go forward, that we staff it to the people coming in. It makes perfect sense. So I'm all for it.
Good. Mr. Kamala, do we need a vote on this or a motion?
Yes, the board will need to move a motion.
Mr. Catino, do you have a motion on this?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to. How did we change it the last time? To suspend the hiring freeze? What did we actually?
I think there was a lot of discussion about amending it, but we didn't have to amend it. It was as written.
Yeah, so basically to allow the hiring as proportion for the summer camps for Parks and Recreation.
Second.
Okay, board members, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Catino, how do you vote?
Catino, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
And Mr. Tedstone, yes. Okay, that carries. Dan, anything else?
Yeah, so the second part of this request has to do with staffing as well, summer staffing, but it's at Sandy Beach. And while financially there's apt to be some revenue to offset this, I don't want anyone to think that this is going to be revenue positive the way the camps are. But there's a huge safety issue. We've been running Sandy Beach for a long time. I think there's an expectation among that community that for the 6 or 8 weeks that we from June till mid-August or mid-June to mid-August that we typically staff that beach for safety reasons. There are lifeguards there. There are people there to enforce rules. There are people there to make sure that people aren't swimming out into areas where there's boat traffic. There's a ton of safety reasons for us to go ahead and continue with our staffing there. So I know that there's at least one resident here that at the meeting that feels that way. I've gotten a letter recently from someone who's very involved in the LMPA, and she just in her letter she very emotionally described the situation where we lost a young boy last year that drowned there. Now, we would not have had the beach staffed at that point in time. I'm not suggesting that would be the case, but I think given that there's an expectation that there's a likelihood that people are going to go to that area no matter what, and it's nearly impossible to police unless we do staff it, we might as well have lifeguards there. For the lifeguards and a gate attendant there.
Okay. Board members, do you have anything on this?
Through the chair. Well, I guess I already commented on this one. Basically, we're either going to have lifeguards or we'll have to have police details to keep people out of there, because at least with lifeguards, we can enforce the social distancing and keep the place with enough crowd control. But if we have to put a police detail there to keep people away, it's going to cost us even more money, and then we don't have it open to the residents. So this is another no-brainer that people just expect to have. The COVID or not, people are going to expect to have the services that Hopkinton is known and loved for.
Okay. Mr. Herr? Anybody else? Sorry, Mary Jo.
Yeah, I was going to ask Dan. Dan, is there some way we can get some signage up there just to remind people to stay 6 feet apart and have smaller groups and a few things like that that would cover us?
Yeah, certainly. And I think that, if we were going to move forward with the plan, we'd definitely do that. And we would also work with Sean to make sure that the appropriate messages are taking place. There's a fine line because when it comes to enforcement of some of these things, as you know, we're hiring high school kids and college kids, and I'm not sure they're going to be the ones that are going to enforce these things. But yeah, absolutely, more signage on that type of thing is a great idea.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, hearing about this and seeing the pictures on the news about, beaches getting flooded just scares me. So, Mr. Kamalu, is there a way that these, the lifeguards could be deputized or something where they have some authority to order people off the beach or are they just going to be stuck calling the cops if they see people not practicing social distancing?
That's what they need to do anyway. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I know you asked Norman, so I could let him answer.
Well, I'm interested in what you have to say as well. So,
Typically, if there is someone that isn't abiding by the rules that are put in place for safety or for even for attendance without paying, then the police do get involved. They ticket vehicles that are parked there. Once we have a gate attendant there, if someone's using the boat ramp without a permit, then they'll get a ticket. I think that's a necessary evil. I don't know that we want to get deputizing. I mean, we have great staff, but I don't know that we want to be deputizing 19-year-olds.
Yep.
Understood. I mean, I just throwing that out there, but I mean, I'm looking at, what can we do if I know I've seen a bunch of the high school kids all hanging out on the same rock out in Whitehall and like, geez.
Yeah.
Is anyone
Through
going
the chair, Dan?
Yes.
Do we still sell or do they still have to get tags?
Yes.
Sandy Beach?
To go to the beach?
Yes.
Yeah, you can buy day passes or season passes. Yes.
But they're not tags that you have to wear.
Yep, they're tags.
They're tags. And how about a process of rescinding the tags if they don't follow the rules and the directions?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
A use at the beach for the rest of the summer, something like that we could enforce.
Well, I mean, do you need to have a tag to get on the beach, or can you, if you're not a resident, isn't there a fee that you pay to get in?
Well, there's the rules that are from 8:30 in the morning till 5, and then there's what happens after 5.
Right.
And all I'm proposing here is that we continue with what we've provided in the past and with what the expectation of the community there and the other folks that use it. We just continue with what we did before, primarily for safety reasons.
And Dan, do you have an idea of, can you put a number on the revenue that we would lose on this?
Brendan, if we want to make this a financial decision, we should not have lifeguards there.
Okay.
And we should not have people at gates.
Okay.
The financials around Sandy Beach, it's a tremendous asset for the community, but it doesn't support itself financially, nor does the common.
Okay.
Chair, I think it makes sense to approve these positions, and I support trying to get this going. Obviously, it has to be in coordination with Sean and Casey and the rules that the governor set forth, as well as what we're doing here locally. Once we do all that, I think it makes sense to proceed.
So, Brian, you being the one that is most financially driven, the hiring freeze was put into effect to save the town money by you thinking that we should go ahead and approve this. You're saying that you're okay with the town losing money on this?
No, I'm saying that the hiring freeze was put in place so that we make decisions about who gets hired and who doesn't based on the community needs, not so much based on, whether a department or an asset's going to make money or lose money. We've been doing Sandy Beach lifeguard positions for years and years. And I think the idea of some kind of normalcy in these very, stressful times for the kids and families makes a lot of sense. So I feel really good about the hiring freeze. It's doing exactly what I thought we should do, which is us make these decisions. But the hiring freeze itself stays in place. And, my mind on hiring freezes, frankly, is on positions that are 100 grand or 120 grand or 80 grand. Those are the real money positions. Paying a kid $12 an hour for 8 weeks is not going to move our needle.
Mr. Chair, I was just about to echo what Brian just said. I think the hiring freeze, we're concerned about, larger numbers, benefits and that kind of thing. $12 an hour for a lifeguard. I don't.
Sounds like we've been losing money at Sandy Beach for a couple of decades. So
My God, we gotta plug that hole.
by way of example, Brendan, if Joe Bennett comes and says, I need to fill the deputy chief position right now, that would be a no in my book, just by example, right? That's big money. It's a big position. There's a lot tied to that. That one I think we could wait on. So those are the kinds of things that I want the hiring freeze to stay in place for, which again, I think these discussions are really good for the community. And Mr. Kamalo doesn't like hiring freezes. He and I have had this debate many times over the years. But I personally like it a lot because it really brings accountability to the board for staffing, which is a huge part of our budget year in and year out.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to sorry, Mr. Terry.
Mr. Terry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just to be clear, it's a little bit more than $12 an hour for a lifeguard.
Yeah.
It's
I know.
somewhere between that $12 and $120,000 a year Brian described.
Okay. That being said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to, again, do the proportional hiring for lifeguards and parking lot gate check personnel for Sandy Beach for this upcoming season.
I'll second that motion with a friendly amendment stating that it's got to be in coordination with the Department of Board of Health and its health administrator.
Accepted.
Second.
Board members, any further discussion? So, Dan, we had a conversation yesterday.
We need to vote on what we just discussed, Brendan.
I know. So it pertains to that. And I'm trying to think I'm not going to bring this up now. I'll bring this up offline. All right.
Hating us, man.
So, Mr. Catino, how do you vote?
Catino, yes.
Mr. Herr,
Her, yes.
Mr. Nasrullah,
Ms. Rulli, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere,
Frenier, yes.
and Ted Stone says no. So 4-1, that's good, carries. So just give me a second to get back into that email for the roster here. All right, so next is National Public Works Week. The board will recognize and celebrate National Public Works Week, which is this week. In doing so, we highlight the value and vital role of the public works projects in Hopkinton and the employees of our local Department of Public Works. We thank them for their service, for all they do for the town. Sometimes we take what they do for granted. This week, we show our appreciation. Board members, do you have any comments?
Well, I just, I love the DPW. It's, as a person that was a facility director for many years, I can say that as a facility director or anybody that works for facilities or the DPW or anything of those, you're always taken for granted. The only time you hear anything is when something wasn't plowed or wasn't cut or wasn't moved. When stuff is running great, it's expected to run great. And so the guys really never get accolades. And, I stopped by a week before last to give them some accolades and have some fun with them. And this is well overdue. We gave them a great facility because for decades they were working in a really messy facility, but now we've got a state of the art facility and named aptly. And I'm just really glad. This is a great thing for us to get done today.
Okay, Mr. Herr?
Just by way of example, the common looks absolutely awesome. Now, we didn't have 50,000 people stomping on it a few weeks ago, which probably helps a little bit. But it's just an example of the quality work DPW does in town. I know there's a lot of other things they do, but if the residents wonder what the DPW does, drive by the common and take a look. It looks really, really good. They did a really nice job. They do it every year, and they do that with all kinds of other projects too. As I move around town, I'm a physical space person. I like a nice physical space. I went and set the chairs up in the selectmen's hearing room before meetings most of the time, just to have everything look in a certain way. And I do that as I drive around town. And when something pops up, I call Mr. Westerling and he jumps on it. But I think they do a great job. The town reflects that. When we get this corridor project done, it's going to really put the nice bow on the whole thing. But I think they do a fabulous job. And they're part of our public safety team. I think sometimes we forget that too. And they help us stay safe. They help our schools. They just contribute in so many ways, and they're very key players in town, and I thank them for all their hard work.
Mr. Nasrullah or Ms. Lafreniere?
Yeah, I think I echo exactly what John and Mr. Catino and Mr. Herr just said. But so my in-laws are in town right now, and been driving around town, and my father-in-law just keeps on commenting on how nice this place looks. Like, who does this? Why is this? How does that get done? And it's all a testament to the DPW and all the work that they do and keeping our town looking great. You can tend to take it for granted because, yeah, it's supposed to look great, but I like to be able to say thank you for a job well done rather than, hey, you need to go fix something. So fantastic, Good job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I know it wasn't this week, this year, but last year, I know the senior citizens appreciate the DPW very much, and that they sponsored and they gave them a luncheon last year for everybody that works for the DPW could go down and have their lunch at the senior center, and it was very nice. And it's nice to be appreciated and to have some appreciation. And this time of year, it's very nice to do that. But I want to just remind everybody, we do have winters here. And thank God for the DPW when it snows. They're out there all day and all night and working their tails off. And they do a wonderful job.
Yep. So I will be brief. Mr. Westerling, I know that you're on here. Thank you very much for everything that you do personally. I happen to have grown up with Mr. Mantzer and Mr. Carty. I know their work ethic and I know their devotion to the town, and that is apparent on the job that all their employees do. It isn't just mowing the lawns, and it isn't just plowing the snow. It's cutting brush, it's filling holes, it's sweeping sidewalks, it's sweeping the street, it's doing everything to make it so we can get from point A to point B. And they do a great job. I don't for one day take the DPW for granted. I happen to have worked a few summers down there, and many years ago. Some of the people are still there, as a matter of fact, and they do a wonderful job. It's selfless. Prior to me becoming a selectman, I used to sit in the Golden Spoon every morning, and when the DPW guys would come in for coffee early, they would get bombarded by people asking why the brush isn't cut on Camp Street off of, that you have to go in through Milford or through the Elm Street through Upton, and they would just always take it with a grain of salt, and they did a good job, and they represented our town wonderfully. that has continued throughout the years. So the DPW does do a great job. There are many, many facets. There's water, there's sewer, there's highway, there's cemeteries, there's everything, and they do a wonderful, wonderful job. So, so thank you very much, John, and thank you to your staff. Your staff is they do a great job. So, thank you very much.
Mr. Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Westerling, before he takes off?
Sure.
He probably knows what's coming. So I got an email or text, a series of texts this week, actually from a former chair of the Board of Selectmen at the time, Benjamin Paleko. And he was wondering what the status was of the town recycling center and when we might be able to access that. He has got some yard waste building up, as I know many other residents have asked me about it as well. But when Ben gets involved, I'm starting to get worried. So I'm just wondering where we are in the town recycling center process.
Through the chair, two things. The first related to the recycling center. E.L. Harvey had shut down the site essentially to public access out of an abundance of caution to protect their employees. But we are going to be working with them to open up the recycling center now that the governor has come out with his 4-phase plan. There may be some different provisions that people will have to observe while they're in there, but we hope to open that up as soon as possible. So we're working on that. And secondly, I would like to thank the select board for recognizing the Department of Public Works during this National Public Works Week. It is a privilege and an honor to serve as your Director of Public Works and to work alongside the men and women who work every day to provide those essential services to the community. They have, through the leadership at the Board of Health, they have worked very hard to observe the protocols, and we've had no downtime during COVID-19. So credit to them and credit to their dedication to the community. And also thank you to Mr. Khumalo for his leadership, and in general to the residents for supporting the Department of Public Works as they do. So thank you all very much.
Mr. Catino, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to designate the week of May 17th through the 23rd as National Public Works Week, and to thank all the employees of Hopkinton's Department of Public Works for their service to the town.
Good.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Catino, how do you vote?
Catino, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Lafreniere, yes.
Mr. Tudstone, an emphatic yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Wonderful job. John, pass our thanks and praise and accolades to your staff, please.
I absolutely will. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening and stay safe and healthy.
You too. Quarterly deposit and investment report is going to be tabled for the next meeting. Mr. Khumalo, the FY 20 and 21 budget and annual town meeting update. Would you please provide us an update on the budgets and talk about the timing of the annual town meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going, with your permission, this is going to be a two-part presentation. I'll provide an introduction, and your CFO, Tim O'Leary, will provide the details behind our update. And as both Tim and I give our presentation, I really want you to think about the following phrases: survival, bridging the gap, and buying time. As you know, we are continuing to work with our colleague in the school department and the budget advisory group on revising a budget plan for fiscal year 2021. As part of that process, and with an eye towards the delay of town meeting until September, our staff is developing authorized monthly budgets for July, August, and September. These are budgets that will need to be reviewed and approved by the select board. The most significant piece of new information I have to share this week involves the award of approximately $1.6 million in federal CARES Act relief funding to the town of Hopkinton. This funding is being distributed to us from the state's 2.7 billion allocation and is available, I want to underscore this, and is available for restricted use in fiscal years 2020 and 2021. Like the funding available to us from FEMA, the CARES Act relief is limited to specific and unbudgeted purposes such as surge costs for COVID-19 response, costs of special equipment, or retrofitting of facilities for worker and public safety. I can share with you that most of us in the Commonwealth, including my fellow town managers as well as our finance team, are following the discussions at the Congress level about expanding the authorized uses of this funding. Hopefully for us, our best case would be a statutory change that will allow the town to use this funding to help cover our expected shortfall in perhaps our local aid. And at this point, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll ask Tim O'Leary, the CFO, to provide more detailed update.
Thank you, Mr. Kamalo. Mr. O'Leary.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Thank you. Mr. Kamalo asked me to step back from our immediate focus on closing out fiscal year 20 and launching fiscal year 21 to discuss the town's financial outlook more broadly in terms of what the current economic recession means for the town's specific risks and challenges. The first key topic is one that the town manager touched on in his briefing 3 weeks ago: the likely duration and tempo of the recovery from this public health and economic crisis. Experts inside and outside of government have expressed ideas about the possible timing of the recovery, and they have specific ways of describing the different paths a recovery might take. Our best case would be for what's called the V-shaped recovery, where the sharp economic drop that the state and nation have faced has an equally sharp and dramatic rebound. Unfortunately, because social distancing is expected to last to some degree for a year or more, a quick V-shaped recovery seems unlikely right now. Another scenario is the W-shaped recovery, where a sharp economic drop is followed by a quick recovery, but then by one or more additional cycles of downturn and recovery. You can imagine this type of more prolonged pathway if, after restarting the economy, we need to shut back down one or more times before a viable vaccine is available. In this scenario, the economy resumes, but then has to contract again and expand again in decreasingly extreme waves until the pandemic has passed. A somewhat more challenging scenario is the U-shaped recovery, where after a steep drop, the economy remains stalled for a prolonged period of time and then recovers. It's similar to the V-shape, but instead of bouncing right back, the economy slogs along for an extended time and then finally recovers. The worst case is the L-shaped scenario, in which a sharp drop-off is followed by a very prolonged period without a recovery, more like a depression. This can happen if an event is so disruptive that economic models about how people live, work, produce, and consume change so fundamentally that the old economic order is lost. If the town could know for certain what type of recovery the state and national economy is facing, our path would be more clear. Since no one can be certain about this situation, the town is left to take actions consistent with outcomes that seem most likely. To suggest a reasonable course, I'd offer that a quick, complete V-shaped recovery seems unlikely, based on the public health projections of the time required for a vaccine to be developed and deployed, or for a widespread immunity to occur. Likewise, on the other end, I'd suggest that the worst case L-type scenario seems unlikely. That would be one in which extreme social distancing remains in place after the pandemic has passed, where very long-term social distancing would have a permanent damaging effect on the economy. I believe we'll fully recover from this crisis, just as the economy recovered after the influenza pandemic a century ago. My advice with what we know today is that the town should prepare for a U-shaped or W-shaped recovery in which the general economy and employment level is substantially recovered in 24 to 36 months, and in which the Commonwealth state revenue recovery lags behind that somewhat. Taking that view into account, the town should be preparing for a challenging fiscal year 20 and 21. As previous briefings have discussed, the town's financial challenges will rise in two primary areas. An expected reduction of local aid from a cash-strapped Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the community's own sensitivity to property tax impact during this period of economic hardship. The budget being developed for your review is oriented in that direction, towards sustaining the town's outstanding schools, public safety, and robust municipal services through what will be difficult years in FY21 and FY22, while carefully managing tax impact by adjusting our capital plans and by applying one-time resources to push through to recovery in FY23 and beyond. The second part of Mr. Khumalo's tasking to me was to briefly take you through our long-term, midterm, and near-term risks as they're impacted by this situation. The town's most significant long-term liabilities remain for our employee pension and retiree healthcare costs. These liabilities are a dominant challenge for many communities across the state and nation, and the town's actions to address these issues are bearing fruit. On the pension side, our state regulator, the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, has mandated a path for full funding of pensions by 2036. The town has been making the required annual contributions, and with a reasonable recovery from the crisis, the town could well remain on track to meet the 2036 target for full pension funding. The town's retiree healthcare liability is an area that is less heavily regulated as of now. Hopkinton has been handling current year retiree healthcare costs on a pay-as-you-go basis and has been making modest annual contributions toward building a reserve for this long-term liability as the complement to the aggressive pension contributions being made. At the current contribution rate of $400,000 a year, the town won't have this liability fully funded for over 50 years. However, one reasonable long-term strategy would be to accelerate contributions to this requirement in 2036 after our pension plan is fully funded. And that would complete all our long-term employee funding in the 2045 to 2050 timeframe. Managing these two complementary liabilities under this type of coordinated strategy makes good sense, given that the regulators are prioritizing action on pensions over action on retiree healthcare costs right now. The town's long-term municipal debt situation is currently manageable, with an overall general fund debt level of $84 million, which is just under 2% of our 2020 tax base, and a current year general fund principal and interest expense of about $8.4 million, which is just over 9% of our operating budget. The town recently approved an additional $9.5 million in new excluded debt for school department classrooms. And the major capital factor facing the town over the next 3 decades is certainly the need for additional facility construction for our outstanding public schools. With state revenue under pressure in the near term, it's reasonable to think that school construction funding through the Mass School Building Authority may be harder to come by. In summary, the need for additional school construction will add to tax impact at Hopkinton in the coming decades, with every $10 million in new school construction adding about $110 to the tax bill of the average homeowner in the early, most expensive years of a borrowing. This long-term tax burden will need to be met along with the cost of actually providing instruction in a growing school system. Many analysts predict that the COVID-19 crisis will trigger a new wave of migration from core cities to less densely settled satellite communities, particularly those with excellent public schools like Hopkinton. Managing the combined cost of building and operating schools will continue to be a dominant financial challenge for the town as an economic entity, and COVID-19 could accelerate this challenge for us by accelerating migration here and enrollment here. In addition to the general government, the town operates 3 enterprises that are accounted for as standalone business units. The town's sewer enterprise has had the most attention in the past year. The timing of substantial debt coming due for system build-out and the loss of several major system users required a major rate hike last year, with an expectation of the need for another large rate hike in the coming year. During the first half of fiscal year 2020, after last year's large rate increase, system use dropped somewhat, but costs also dropped to more than offset the revenue loss. As a result, the sewer enterprise is trending toward a surplus for this fiscal year, which is good news for us. As you may recall, the sewer enterprise will be completing a debt payment bubble in fiscal year 2022, and the enterprise looks stable beyond that point. Significant sewer system risks would include any additional loss of large commercial ratepayers and any capital expansion of the sewer system on projects that add more in debt and operating costs than they bring in operating revenue. The town's water enterprise is fiscally stable, with well-matched revenue and expenses within the current rate structure. In the longer term, significant risks for water system include possible well field depletion, which would require the significant expense of purchasing water from outside the town for resale, and the eventual widespread replacement of water main infrastructure. In terms of system expansion, it will be important to ensure that any expansion of the system can generate revenue sufficient to support new debt and new operating costs, and perhaps even water supply costs, without adversely impacting existing users. Parks and Rec enterprise is the enterprise most impacted by COVID, as you discussed earlier. In normal years, that enterprise runs with an authorized operating subsidy, but most program costs are paid by participant fees. The Parks and Rec Board has been agile in adding, adjusting, and trimming programs based on community demand, operating cost, and operating revenue. It's a market-based program with the operating subsidy the town provides has been very viable when running a large number of programs in normal times. To follow up on the Select Board's earlier discussion, it's noteworthy that the fixed costs for permanent professional staff, debt service on Sandy Beach, transfer payments to DPW for maintenance of the town common, and maintenance spending on facilities the town has invested in are together more than the FY 2020 operating subsidy level. Typically, they're also subsidized by user fees. The Parks and Rec enterprise has no accumulated retained earnings, but does have a balance of $340,000 that is being held for the eventual renewal of the Fruit Street fields. As the Select Board discussed earlier, supporting the continuation of recreation programs through COVID-19 can certainly be done. It will probably require an adjustment to the operating subsidy in the FY 21 budget, and we will work on that with Parks and Recreation. Moving closer on the financial horizon, as Mr. Khumalo discussed at the Select Board's last meeting, the town's prudence in building up stabilization funds and its forethought in negotiating a host community agreement with Legacy Farms to help cover education cost growth are both benefiting town finances in this emergency situation. These resources are important tools that can help us weather the COVID-19 economic downturn while preserving critical services that the town has worked to build and while managing the impact on property tax to citizens. The town's objective should be to use no more than half of these available resources in fiscal year 2021 to smooth the temporary loss in local aid that we expect, allowing us the flexibility to respond again in fiscal year 2022 with additional resources if necessary. If we learn nothing else from the financial aspect of this public health crisis, it should be that as soon as the economy is in recovery, the town should rapidly rebuild reserves so that we are at least as well prepared in the future to respond to a sudden, sharp downturn as we are today. Another major midterm issue that will require the town's attention involves how to address the growth of recurring costs, especially the rapid escalation in the cost of supporting our excellent public schools. It seems likely that during the COVID-19 recession, the town will be using one-time funding from reserves and from the Legacy Farms host community agreement to sustain services. To the extent that one-time funding is used for recurring expenses, a structural funding deficiency will emerge in FY 22 or 23 when one-time funding may be exhausted. Moving finally to the tactical short-term picture, our cash position remains excellent with almost $57 million available today. We've been in contact with our bankers and we have no indication that our bond rating has degraded, so we are still able to borrow as necessary at very competitive rates. In summary, we've assessed the likely scenario as a U-shaped or W-shaped recovery with a 2 to 3 year time frame. We are developing budget recommendations focused on sustaining service excellence in education and public safety, while deferring action on other mission areas and pausing our capital renewal program as we endure this recession. These actions, together with the careful use of stabilization reserves and other one-time funding, will help the town bridge the gap to economic recovery. This moderate approach will also give us time to learn more about the actual path of the recovery and will allow us to make future budget adjustments if necessary, first before a September town meeting, and again as we develop an FY 2022 budget. Even in recovery, the town will face challenges that were on our horizon before COVID-19. Pension and OPEB liabilities, the need for additional school facilities, and the challenge of developing recurring funding to support the cost of the school system. The town is developing strategies to leverage our strengths to push through this recession, sustaining vital services, and in time to recover and address longer-term challenges. The takeaway from this report should be that while Hopkinton is facing a serious economic downturn today, the town remains financially sound and strong, and it is so because of a constant track record of prudent decisions made over several years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Board members, do you have anything for Mr. Khumalo or Mr. O'Leary on this?
I think it was an excellent presentation. And as I head into, I guess I'm in my 12th and final year on the select board, I've never seen anything like what's coming at where we are right now or what's coming at us in the coming months. And I think probably next couple of years, as far as municipal finance goes, balancing the budget. We have to balance the budget by law. It's always a challenge. But what I see now, based on the things I've seen over the last 11 years, this is going to be huge. And we, as a board, really need to understand the municipal budget better than we've ever understood it before. The rules, the regs coming out of the state. Obviously, the feds are going to be playing a little bit of a role now in our local budget, I think, for a couple of years, hopefully. So, budgeting is just going to be a huge challenge for all of us on the board, but for the community as a whole. So I think we got to get ready for some tough days ahead and really pull out our calculators and become very familiar with them, because it's going to be nothing like we've ever experienced in the last 15 years that I've been involved in town.
Yeah, through the chair, I remember watching Mr. Hur back in 07, 08, and just, keeping his thumb on everything. But I think that the citizens of Hopkinton really should take some comfort in how Tim has really explained it quite well. It really is going to take some tough board members in order to make this work, but I think we can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Nasrullah or Lufreniere.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in there, thank you for all the work you're doing, Mr. Leary. I think, we got to roll with the punches here. This has never really happened. We've never seen anything like this. And, we're going to have to just do the best we can. I thank you for your strong work and for the explanation, kind of really laying it all out. It's going to be tough, and we all know it.
All right.
I just want to say how much I appreciate Tim. I have been in his office picking his brain a number of times since I was elected on the select board. And I know I'm going to spend a lot more time in there given the future and what's happening. And I appreciate his assistance, and this explanation was excellent.
All right, Mr. Catino, I will accept a motion. I'll hear a motion.
No, we don't have a motion to, just to accept his report as given? We don't have a motion for,
All right, so I request a motion that the select board find that there currently exists an emergency that poses an immediate threat to the health or safety of persons or property in the town of Hopkinton, and B, the threat prevents the completion of the business of the town's annual town meeting by June 30, 2020, and C, the governor has declared a state of emergency with respect to such emergency. And I further move that based on these findings, the annual town meeting, which was previously delayed to June 22nd, 2020, be further delayed till, Mr. Kamala, do we have a
date? Where is he?
Is Mr. Kamala still with us?
I think he heard that report about the finances and resigned.
yeah, I don't see him up.
No, he's not up.
All right. So, Mr. Deegan, do we have an idea of when we're going to push this town meeting back till? Do you have a date?
We don't have a specific date right now. We still need to consult with Tom Garabedian before we can really make an official one marked down. September, we obviously have some things we need to watch out for because we'll hopefully be having the rescheduled marathon, as well as we'll have a primary in the first week. So we don't want to run into risking that clashing with our town meeting
Right.
either.
All right, so let me say, so I further move that based on these findings, the annual town meeting, which was previously delayed till June 22nd, 2020, be further delayed to a date to be determined, and that the town manager be instructed to prepare for the select board's approval at the next meeting on June 2, 2020, a warrant for the annual town election to be held on June 29, 2020. So it looks like on this language, it's pushing it back 1 week to June 29th. I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
I think that's the election still.
That's the election date.
29th and any.
Okay, yep. I'm sorry, yep.
Yep.
So we will, so in that motion, the date to be determined, that the town manager will be instructed to prepare for the select board's approval at the next meeting on June 2, 2020, a warrant for the annual town election to be held on June 29, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, Mr. Catino, how do you vote?
Tino, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Grenier, yes.
Ted Stone, yes. Thank you. Mr. Kamala is back. Mr. Kamala, we lost you there for a minute. But Mr. Deegan filled us in, I believe. Did you hear us read that motion?
I had the motion. I thank you, Connor, for jumping in, and I think you covered everything.
So the town meeting, which was previously delayed till June 22nd, will be further delayed until a date to be determined.
In September.
And probably presented to us at our next meeting on June 2. Hopefully.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
great.
should be able to figure that out with the town moderator.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Kamala, town manager's report, knowing that we're already 25 minutes late.
Yeah, 3 quick updates on the Main Street Corridor project. Number one, the orders of taking are formally registered at the Register of Deeds.
Good.
Number two, the notice of taking documents are being mailed to property owners this week. And then finally, this afternoon, I received a wonderful positive message. The message came from the Secretary of Economic Development. The letter partly reads as follows. On behalf of the Baker Polito administration, I am pleased to inform you that I have approved a grant in the amount of $3 million for the Main Street Corridor Improvements Project. And this is a project that I think, given where we are now, is going to be very important for the economic growth and development of not only Hopkinton, but the Metro West region.
Mr. Kamala, would you like to put into words how that makes you feel that we got that $3 million grant?
Ecstatic.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for your hard work getting that taken care of. Is that it for the town manager report?
That's it.
Okay, liaison reports. Any board members? Mr. Catino, quickly.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Herr, just as quickly.
Nada.
Mr. Nasrullah, at your leisure.
Not really an update, but I just wanted to chime in that this Saturday marks the last day of the month of Ramadan. I've been fasting for the past 30 days and I'm really looking forward to it.
Wait a minute. He was eating a salad a minute ago. What's he talking about?
We fast from sunrise to sunset. So at 8:03, I drank some water and I took a bite of a sandwich.
And that's it.
Well, I have made up for both of our eating habits and I ate a lot today. So,
For you.
Miss Lafreniere,
Well, I just wanted to remind people that a lot of the Memorial Day celebrations will not be held this year. And that whether or not they are, that we should take some time, Memorial Day weekend, and remember our veterans and those who came before us and gave us this wonderful nation that we have today.
And if I may, through the chair, we did some taping on Sunday for the virtual Memorial Day remembrance. And that's going to be broadcast on HCAM on Monday. So, if everybody would please tune in, it's well worth it because it is it's one of the best days in Hopkinton, and I'm glad that we could at least do it virtually.
Miss Lafreniere, note to self, next year I will go before you when it comes to this meeting, because that's what I was going to talk about, was the veterans and Veterans Day celebrations and. So, but yes, absolutely. And I would implore all the town members to keep their eyes peeled to Hop News, Hopkins Independent, all these news agencies locally, and try to come out and support the seniors during their graduation parade. That looks to be a pretty unique and a pretty fun event to have. Future board agenda items. Mr. Catino.
Yeah, I've actually got two. I'd like to get an update on the that East Main Street parcel where the International Marathon Center is going to be, and downtown parking. I just want to make sure that we've got that covered before we start talking about another town meeting. We voted on some parcels last year, and make sure that we deliver them in time to get some parking before Main Street starts.
Mr. Herr.
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Nasrullah.
Yeah, I'd like us to talk about discharging of guns, shooting guns. Lately, we've been hearing gunshots. Last night, we heard gunshots, not last night, 2 nights ago, at like 10 p.m. And I think I'd like to talk about maybe limiting the hours and locations of where people can be shooting.
They're actually, there's all kinds of laws, 500 feet from a house, and none of the gun ranges are open at that time. No gun ranges open after sunset.
Right. This is someone privately shooting out in the woods.
No, it's illegal.
Yeah, and disconcerting when you have the windows open and you hear the birds chirping and bang. So.
Sure. So I don't know if that's something to do with us or if that has something to do with the police, but regardless, it will be duly noted. Mr. Kamala will point us in the right direction for what we need to do. I do not own a gun. I have one on loan, but I don't even know how to use it. And it's up in Maine.
No issues with guns. I just have issues with being woken up.
Yep. Ms. Lafreniere.
Well, nothing specific. I just want to keep the election information going and getting out there and getting people to vote early and make it easier on us, election officials or workers, and get them to get their votes in.
Okay.
That's it.
And for me, the only thing I want, Mr. Kamalo, I want you to figure out what our next step is to get Route 85 hot topped and have that that fix from Jerry's place on X on there, Sunoco in the center of town, heading out towards Southborough. I drive down there every morning on my way to work. I generally leave early enough where there's no traffic coming, so I stay on the left lane. And I was coming down there the other day and I saw a Hopkinton vehicle on its way up, and it wasn't at Mr. Westerling. So I believe that's a northerly direction. That lane on the northern direction is borderline unpassable. So we need to really, as a main town's thoroughfare, we really need to get that done. And I know, Mr. Kamal, you have been working on it, but I'd like to maybe put a fire under your boots, for lack of a ability to say another part of your body. So, and that's all I got.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
You may, quickly.
I will not complete your sentence, but a couple things. I want to take this opportunity again to recognize the wonderful team that we have at DPW. The great work that we see is all because of the people, the human beings who are behind that work. These are people that I interact with, whether we are in negotiations or I'm asking them to go above and beyond, they've never said no. I recognize them. And then secondly, I also want to take this opportunity to thank Elaine Lazarus for the great work that she does in getting us ready for these meetings.
Mary Jo, you have your cat that crawls all over me. I got my rat that crawls all over me.
Well, it was on the keyboard a minute ago. I was afraid I might lose you.
All right. So that said, I believe we lost Mr. Catino due to battery failure. So I will request a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Catino is not on, I don't believe. How do you vote? Present, Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Mr. Tedstone, yes. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, folks. Good night.